It is my honor and pleasure to introduce to you the founder, chairman, and CEO of Laureate Education Incorporated, Mr. Douglas Becker. He leads one of the largest higher education institutions in the world. This year, Laureate Education has 1 million students enrolled. That's not graduated, that is enrolled. It's truly incredible. Doug Becker is also the chairman of the board of the International Youth Foundation, and really an inspiration to all of us entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs. So Doug, please join us.
Thank you so much, Ritu, and welcome to everyone. Good afternoon. Especially, I want to give my welcome and my congratulations to the fellows who are doing such impressive work. I had the chance with Bill yesterday to meet all of them, 20 of them, and to hear a little bit about them, and just really, I'm so inspired by the work that they're doing, and have really enjoyed those presentations that I was able to see this afternoon. So on behalf of Laureate and IYF, I'm really pleased to welcome you back, and special thanks to CSIS for hosting us here. Laureate and IYF are both incredibly special to me. I sometimes think of it as my day job and my evening job. My day job at Laureate is trying to create access for people who have the possibility of affording a good, affordable education. And the work at IYF, of course, in many cases is to help people who would never have that possibility. And so for me, it's actually very balanced and very clear the important and different roles of these two respective organizations. And I would say my commitment to these organizations is not just relating to my own personal linkage to them, but really because I believe in the mission and the values of both of these really special organizations, and they both revolve around investing in young people. Of course, that's why we're here today. Investing in their potential, investing in their education, investing in their leadership. And really, what I think is so exciting when I see a group like the Fellows this year is to just try to imagine where they will be 10 or 15 or 20 years from now. It's just going to be breathtaking what they can accomplish, what you can accomplish. And everyone in this room is either one of you or somebody who wants to support the work that you're doing. And I think that puts you in a very special place. So just a moment on Laureate. Ritu already mentioned we have 1 million students. We have 88 universities. And our work is building and managing universities, especially in countries where there isn't sufficient access to higher education. So that puts us in a lot of emerging markets, including a lot of the markets where IYF works, where we find an imbalance, where there just isn't the capacity to meet the needs. And this is I would say, a very belief-driven organization. We believe that people deserve choices in education, that people deserve the opportunity to change their lives through education. And therefore, for us, we feel that what we're doing has an impact. And that's why social impact, the work that we do, whether it's as a for-profit company like Laureate, a nonprofit organization like IYF, we're both attempting to make people's lives better. And that is something that I know everybody in this room wants to assist and participate in. We had an exciting week last week at Laureate because we announced that we were converting to a benefit corporation. Some of you may know the benefit corporation is a new way to describe companies that really want to make sure that they're having a positive and measurable impact on society, and that the impact that they have on all of the constituents, on the communities that they serve, vendors, suppliers, the environment, all of those things are taken into account when important decisions are made. So to our knowledge, we would be the largest company to become a benefit corporation, and the first company that is registered to be a public company that will be a benefit corporation. So I think it just shows you the convergence. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you. I think it just shows you the convergence of these movements, that people combine to try to do good things for the world, and they find different ways to do it and different ways to pay for it. And in the end, that's really the difference, that we're looking to find investors who support our work in their case because they believe in us and they expect they can make a return. And for IYF, the work, of course, is to convince people to fund their work through grants and donations and agreements to pay for services. And so in that respect, it's really not that my day job and my evening job is not that different. So let me just turn to the Youth Action Net program. This is something that's been incredibly important to me. I was 17 years old when I started my first business and 19 when I sold my first business. And I was just talking to a friend of mine about, I didn't even remember the math, but I was 27 when our company first went public. So for a long time, I really identified myself as a youth in action, much like the young people who are here. Now the difference is I just have a lot more gray hair, and now I get so much pleasure out of the idea of trying to help others experience the same exciting trajectory that has been such an important part of my life and my growth. So Youth Action Net is really important to me. I understand the challenges that social entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all kinds face. It's really difficult. It takes a lot of resilience. We talked about that together, Bill and I, yesterday. I see the can-do spirit of these young visionaries and want to support what they're doing. It's contagious just to be around them. And I would say youth-led change is something that is very important to me. If we have 1 million students, as Ritu mentioned, at Laureate, to think that some of them will be able to really go out and make a positive impact in the world, that's really meaningful. And a chance to mobilize and take things to scale, which is also something that I think IYF and Laureate have in common. We think about how to do good things, but make sure that they scale, because the magnitude of the need is enormous. And just helping a few people at a time, yes, there's the starfish theory of I helped that one, and that's great, but there's a lot of starfish out there that need to be thrown back into the ocean, and this is an important aspect of the work that we're doing. So just a couple words on entrepreneurship, because that is a key hallmark of what I do in my day job and the work that IYF is doing here. Entrepreneurship is, it really is a journey. It's a difficult journey, and it's a path that's usually not straight from the start to the finish. We understand that these social entrepreneurs that we're celebrating today may ultimately leave the venture that they currently are leading and go do something else with their lives. In many ways, our investment is in them, not in their venture. So the next venture may be the best venture, or the next venture might be public service, or any other number of ways that you could help make an impact on your country, your community, helping people in the world. So our support to each of you, the Laureate Fellows, is really lifelong, because we believe in you as individuals, as people first and foremost. So as I come to the topic of people, it's a great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who I think is really emblematic of why youth matter and what can be accomplished by vision and passion and energy, as is the case for so many of our Laureate Fellows here. So 7 years ago, a young man from Jordan was selected as a fellow of this very program. And since then, he has transferred his venture that he was working on at the time to someone else, which is an important skill, by the way, how that transition can be done, and worked in multiple organizations. He, you'll hear in a moment, is currently with the United Nations, but before that worked for the League of Arab States, was in Iraq, also for the United Nations Population Fund in Iraq, before that with Save the Children. Really distinguished career, compressed in a very short period of time. And now is the first ever United Nations Secretary General's Youth Envoy, which it makes us so proud. And so I really hope that you will all welcome and join me in welcoming Ahmad Al Hindawi as our next speaker. Ahmad, please.
Thank you so much, Douglas. It's a great honor to be introduced by you, and thank you for your leadership and for the overdose of inspiration you offer to young people and for your commitment. Well, congratulations to all of you, and great to reconnect with many old folks, and I would like to extend a very warm thanks to International Youth Foundations for all the amazing work you have been doing over the years, to you, Val, to all the team, Shoka, and also to a person that always inspired me, you, James. Thank you very much for your leadership and for your commitment over the years. I was always dropping emails to you whenever I feel I'm confused about something. You have been always very generous in extending your support and guidance. And I think that shows the value of this fellowship. It's not over by a year. You can always connect with a network. I see Khalida, who is, where's Khalida? She left? Okay, I have a word to talk there. So see. She knows everything I'm going to say, but this is the amazing network that I've grown over the years. And it's not a surprise, 15th anniversary of this amazing program. Actually, it's 15th anniversary also for the deadline of the Millennium Development Goals. So this is kind of synchronized with the world's boldest idea to eradicate extreme poverty, reverse climate change. I think I could only wish another happy 15 years to this amazing network that will hopefully continue to push for the global development goals and the sustainable development goals. I want to talk about social entrepreneurship, and I want to talk about the United Nations. I want to talk about so many different things, but I have to focus on a few. So probably, I remember my personal story has something to probably of relevance to the story of many of you. I listened to some of the story of young entrepreneurs this morning, and I could tell that the word love came very strongly. And I think being entrepreneur is only about one thing, that you know there's so many problems out of the world, and you know like nothing is easy. There are many challenges in front of you. But guess what? I mean, that's what makes it more exciting for all of us, to challenge these challenges back and make sure that you overcome them and you make success stories. That's the stories we heard from you this morning, and that's the presentation you offered us. I think that's the constant reminders of this generation of young people who I see Khalida back here, so glad that you joined, so to prove the point that you are here with us. So I talked about you. Okay. The question, I guess, is when it comes to engaging this generation of young people and the development of their countries, we need everyone. And my job as the Secretary General's Envoy in Youth, and actually, I remember when I was appointed as almost 3 years ago, 2 years and a half, I was like invited to the UN. They told me, well, you are the first ever Secretary General's Envoy in Youth in the history of the UN. And not only that, you are the youngest senior official in the history of the United Nations, which for me, it makes sense to be like a youth envoy, you have to be young. So I could figure out the youth thing, but then I have to debate the envoy thing. And I remember a month after my appointment, I came to the CSIS for the first lecture in the think tank, and I came a month after, so wonderful to be back here, although it's a new building, it's fabulous. I remember that I tried to find the word envoy by saying, well, usually the United Nations, they have envoy whenever there's a problem. So you have envoy for Somalia, envoy for Yemen, one for Syria, and we even have one for Ebola. And now they have one for youth, which is no pressure. It shows like how we should deal with young people. But I was super encouraged when I met with the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon for the first time. He told me, like, you know what, I don't believe in working only for youth. I believe in working with youth. That's why I wanted somebody to validate my thinking all the time and to help me understand better this generation of young people and to see how we can make the United Nations more accessible. So that was very encouraging, that the thinking of the UN, despite it's called envoy, but it's not a liability for the world, but rather the opportunity. I think that's what we have been trying to do over the past 3 years. Now, I remember 7 years ago when I came to DC for the fellowship, it was kind of exciting because none of the folks who were organizing knew back then that we will be hosted in DC at the same time, at the same week, when President Obama will become the President of the United States of America. And how exciting that is. I remember we were in the streets, I don't know why we were dancing only, I mean dancing, everything, and I think we all felt American that night. I think that evening, that experience of seeing that the election was kind of an introduction for all of us to better understand the value of change, the value of democracy, and also the promise of, yes, we can, and we all have this moment where we connected with each other. I remember that network of the fellows who were back then in DC, seeing the American election at the same time, having this amazing experience of connecting with each other, building the network, and learning from each other and from the program was priceless in every sense. So it really, influenced my life big deal, and it gave me a new energy to move forward. My personal story is a kind of the story of many of you. I come from a middle-class family in Jordan. I studied in the second city in Jordan. It's called Zarqa. Nothing fancy up there. So what we had is, in fact, I learned English when I was 21. So that's where the first time I learned English. So I thought, like, okay, let's see what the life could bring us. And I've been working hard to establish Youth for Democracy Network, expanded to 5 countries. We have been volunteering in everywhere, presided over the Security Council, or the Security Council, oh my God. That's the UN, the Student Council. There are other councils in the world. I didn't preside over the Security Council. Don't quote me in that. 3 years at the UN, they could do miracles, believe me. So, and I have been in this student work, youth work, and you know, there's something magical about like a student, like, and this kind of youth development work and being to volunteer in places. Because as a volunteer, you give 3, 4, 5 years of your life thinking that you are giving. I give time, I give money sometimes, I give like over other options and choices. I decide to spend my time in one direction. And the magical thing is, like, I realize at the end, like, what I gave is literally nothing compared to what I gained from that experience. And probably that's the only thing that you give and you gain more. It's better than any investment in the world. I don't know anything similar to volunteering, similar to dedicating your life and your energy to help your community and your people. The return is massive, and you could see. That's what happened with me. I mean, I continue working from that path and until I work in different places and different countries, and I get specialized in youth policies. I have the Arab League and designing several youth policies in the Arab region. And finally, I was invited to serve at the United Nations, which I consider as the greatest honor of my life so far, to serve 2 things that I believe the most, and serve the United Nations and serve young people, serve the world's youth and the United Nations. When I was appointed, I remember that a press release went out saying that you will be serving and tackling the issues of 1.8 billion young person. No pressure. So I often say, like, I have 1.8 billion reasons to wake up every morning. And trying to get the United Nations to do more. Now, I'm super proud to work for the UN. It's a place where it's sheltering, serving, catering for 60 million refugees every day, 3 meals. Not even a country in the world could serve 3 meals and shelter and food for 60 million every day. And the world, there are many problems out there, many burning fires. And back to your question when you opened this discussion this morning, I think you question why a hardcore kind of think tank in peace and security dealing with these issues. Clearly, because young people are the most affected. I think I fully agree with you that we need to challenge that negative narrative about young people as the problem. They are the solution, but not only as a nice line to say they are the solution. I think young people are proving they are the solution, and we need to recognize that. At the same time, we have to acknowledge the fact that 600 million youth almost in our world today, they live either in conflict zones or fragile security situations, and they are severely affected by conflicts. And I think one of the conclusions we have in our world today, that peace and security is the foundation for any human activity, and that's what we need to reinforce, and we need to get young people in the efforts basically around peace and security. Back to where social entrepreneurship could be helpful in our work. When I was appointed, and sorry for saying I a lot this time. People who know me, they know that I don't share my story that much, but it feels so intimate for me coming back after 7 years. So maybe I'm reporting in the progress since 7 years. That's why I'm just even saying my own experience. But I'll tell you, like, to be a social entrepreneur, you don't really only have to exist in the vacuum. You really have to work with others. You sometimes have to work in institutions. And when I came to the UN, I was given the title, and they told me, okay, go figure it out. Like, let's see what we're going to do now. And I remember, like, arriving to the UN system. If I didn't go through that path of, like, challenging and seeing all the problems and trying to overcome some of these challenges, I think I would not have been able to establish this office at the UN. The UN system is a huge, almost 40 UN agencies. And I was asked as the first one to build an office. And to build office and to plug it in a system like the UN, it's kind of requires a Tom Cruise kind of character with a mission impossible to accomplish that after 70 years for the UN. But it wasn't easy at all, but it was like that skills that I learned over time. And that's my message to you. You might decide to stay in your venture, your business, or your project. You might decide to go somewhere else. But these mobile skills that you have earned in your journey, you'll be able to apply them wherever you go. And you will use them. You might use them at different scales and different shapes, but they will remain there, and they only mature more, actually, with time, and you'll be able to benefit from that. So that's something that I would encourage you all to maximize the experience and to connect with each other. I think it will be so much fun 7 years from now. Maybe some of you will be in my position. I will salute another Pakistani fellow sitting there. But life could take you to places, and what would make it really fun is to keep yourself surrounded with like-minded and like-ambitious as well people around you who could advise you and support you on this journey. Now, just to tell you about what I think is the biggest news coming from New York, and that's what I started talking about, is the Sustainable Development Goals. And you're all familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, right? Well, good. And you should. No, I think the SDGs is the boldest commitment made in the history of human beings to eradicate extreme poverty and bring back our planet to the path of sustainability. And when I think about it, is you have 17 goals. If you read them, they were negotiated by 193 governments. And all world leaders, they came to sign on these 190, I would say, from the 193 countries to endorse these 17 goals. So let me tell you what I think will be part of our task moving forward. I think as you work in your project, in your initiative, you have to align yourself with these goals. Because if you think about it, they are the menu for how the world could be a better place 15 years from now. And whatever project you have, whether for gender equality, maternal health, engaging young people, youth participation, youth employment, you have to align yourself with this global plan for action. The Sustainable Development Goals for me could be a game changer in our world. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, says we might be, and actually we are the first generation that could eradicate extreme poverty, but we might be the last generation that could reverse the climate change. And in that spirit, I think we can't postpone our responsibility, or we can't just think that we inherited this planet from the past generations. I usually talk about this planet as a place that we are only borrowing from the future generations, because this is not inheritance. I mean, if you inherit it, you can do whatever you want with it. But think of it as a place that you are borrowing from future generations. And it's just not acceptable, I think, that you have this many people and this many children, almost 60 million, who are still out of school. You have 74 million young people who are still out of jobs or training. You have over 120 million who are youth who are illiterate, or you have 600 million who are still living in conflict zone, fragile security situation, or you have 2/3 of the world population who are still offline, and you have this much resources in the world today. It's just shame if we accept it, and you might think you are too little and these goals and these challenges are too big, but the way to think about it, I think, that nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And being a social entrepreneur is not about thinking of your village. It's not only about thinking of your community. It's thinking how you can do with your little things that you are offering, how that could contribute to the global picture. So that's why keep that global vision. Keep that global network around you and act at the national level. Believe me, these are my very conclusion for everything what I have done so far in my life, is the fact that if you keep that global vision, you will be always encouraged, and you will keep yourself basically aligned with the global efforts to eradicate extreme poverty, ensure gender equality, and all the great goals outlined in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. That's my message to you. I think you all know what you have to do. You don't need anyone to lecture on you. I think you all have this great sense of responsibility. But I think being part of a network and in a fellowship is about reminding yourself, reminding others, and being inspired by others that you are not alone in this journey. And I think that's the lesson I took from the fellowship, is the fact that you belong to a network that will never leave you alone, because you will connect with each other, and you will always find friends, like-minded people. And you know, there are many stories about where these networks could be very helpful. At one point in a conflict over Kashmir, when Pakistan and India were about almost about going to a fight, basically. The chief negotiators from both sides, they were roommates. So of course they have to defuse the conflict because they have lived together, they were together, they are friends. And I think building global networks is also about peace and security. Building a global network is about connecting future leaders and today's leaders together who could make this world a better place. And at the United Nations, I could only tell you that we are very committed. This is the compass that we'll be applying in the future. And in that spirit, we are about to launch a global partnership for youth in the Sustainable Development Goals to ensure that we build a global movement behind the Sustainable Development Goals. At the end, I could only thank CSIS for your leadership, for this joint initiative with the International Youth Foundation, to you, Val, for your leadership over the years and for all the advice, and to the team. You have been excelling in bringing young people together. I have a lot of sympathy with you, how you could decide on who are the fellows, because I know it's a painful exercise of not having everyone sometimes or having many more, but that's an encouraging sign for all of us that many young people out there who deserve to be acknowledged. My last line at all, why fellowships are important, why these hours are important, because when I describe enabling environment for young people, we talk about laws, we talk about funding, we talk about mechanisms, we talk about scaling up coaching, we talk about plenty of things. But one of the things that we don't talk about enough is recognition. And you do have to recognize young people. You can't only bring them to the news when they are causing troubles. And the most amazing people who are today threatening their lives, basically, with the delivering services with the Red Crescent in Syria, for example. You will never hear in the news the story about young people who are delivering these services. You'll only see the stories of the troublemakers. And I think we need to acknowledge and recognize young people. And I think that's what this program is about. At least the philosophy is great, but that's also one of my takes and why this is extremely important. I'm extremely honored to be here and to hear about your stories. And once again, I thank you very much. Thank you.
So, Ahmad, your English is remarkably good for having only learned it like 3 years ago. That's really amazing. It's phenomenal, really. So in my session, we were talking about the return on investment. How do we measure the return on investment? How do we present this to donors? So you are a walking return on investment. Yeah, there's no question. No question. So my notes are gone. Did you steal my notes? I think you did steal my notes. All right, so for those of you that have stayed with us, you are about to be rewarded. I want to introduce Gustavo Reis. He's the founder of For You Too, a language learning enterprise that enables residents of Brazil's favelas to learn English classes at 20% of the going rate. They're conversation-based classes with teachers from diverse countries. So he has not only trained 3,500 Brazilians, but also has hosted 100 volunteer teachers. So Gustavo, the stage is yours.
.5% of Brazil's population speak English. And if you take a deep look in that data, you see that those 5% usually, they are rich people. In Brazil, it's obvious. If you have money, you can learn. But if you don't have, definitely, you're never going to have any opportunity to learn English. Another interesting fact is that 64% is the wage difference between someone that speaks English and another identical person that do not speak English in Brazil. But even worse than that, when you don't speak English, your word, this big word, is getting so smaller. Imagina se eu fosse aqui brasileiro. Como milhares de outros brasileiros, que não tiveram a oportunidade de estar aqui onde eu estou. I'm Gustavo Fuga. I was born in a poor family in Rio de Janeiro. And 4 years ago, I didn't speak English myself. I didn't have the $200 per month to pay for English classes in Brazil. And when I was a kid in my school, I was taught back there to be just one more person in the world, to be just a statistic, to be just one more number in the labor force. Basically, I was born to be a number, like many of people, not only in Brazil, but all over the world. But 4 years ago, I decided to change that. I decided to learn English by myself. But more than that, I decided to solve not my own problem, but more than 200 million people in Brazil problems. And I did that creating For You Too. So 4 years ago, I decided to create For You Too, the first language school network focused on the low-income people in Brazil. We are the only language school that goes inside the favela. We are the only language schools that is about 15 times cheaper than the average price. We are the only language school that costs $15 per month. But more than that, we are the only language school that only work with foreign teachers, including refugees that are already in Brazil. For us, this is so powerful because much more than teach them English, they are learning and they are getting more references. They can have the opportunity and they are allowed it to dream because they have more references. Right now, we decided to do that, putting together the passion that an NGO has with all the pragmatism that a company has and should have. So we did that and we created a social business that is sustainable, profitable, and scalable. We started in one branch with 50 students in one of the biggest favelas in Brazil. And right now, in 3 years, we achieved more than 2,000 students and 7 branches in the whole city of Brazil. We have 45 team members, professional ones. We think that we need to get the volunteer to another level. The 1.0 version of volunteer is not enough for our generation. We want to do good, but we want to do good being paid for it. That's why everyone in our team received for doing that, from the teachers to the receptionists that are from the communities, from all over our back office team as well. As you mentioned, we are also a B Corp benefit corporation. We were one of the first in Brazil, and I'm really glad to enjoy this fellowship with all of you guys. But we could continue growing that way, would be an option. But for us, actually, it's not a real option. That's why right now, we are looking for an investor to take this path with us, that in the next 5 years, we are going to open 50 new branches, achieving more than 20,000 students. But more than that, we want to launch the first blended learning platform that will connect the most important part of the face-to-face relationship with the most advanced and extraordinary technology that already exists. So we want to put those both things together to expand our impact all over the country, and why not all over the globe. I believe that we can create and we can live in a world where all the companies, they don't just want to be the best in the world, but they want to be the best for the world. I believe that we can have, all the persons can do their abilities, their knowledge for good without abdicating of having money, without abdicating of have enough remuneration for that. And that's what exactly we want to do. We believe that we can change the world and make money at the same time, and that the world should follow that path as well. So if you still believe in that, like us, For You Too, it is For You Too. So thank you.
Very nice job. I hope you'll accept small investors too, not just big investors like Doug. I don't have as much money as he does. So, I want to introduce our last fellow, Crystal Gomes. She is a talented singer-songwriter, and yes, is that a ukulele or a really small guitar? It's a ukulele. She founded Diamonds on the Street in Singapore to empower at-risk youth, ages 13 to 21, to craft new life narratives and turn their personal reflections into art. She's benefited at least 80 youth while sharing a message of hope and resilience with thousands of audience members. The stage is yours.
In April 2011, I lost my voice to a condition called spasmodic dysphonia. The doctor told me that there was no cure. I felt robbed of my conversations with my loved ones. Singing used to be a huge passion in my life. Now I could barely project my voice. Soon, I isolated myself from my loved ones and my friends. In 2011, that same year, a good friend asked if I could sing at a wedding. After I went up on stage, after I sang, I went down, I was looking for the exit sign. To my surprise, there were many people who came up to me to hug me and to encourage me to press on. At that point of time, I realized that it was not about how well I sang. It was about having hope. So, in 2013, I started an initiative called Diamonds on the Street to spread hope and to share hope together with people who were going through a season of pain. It is so called Diamonds on the Street because it is for the men on the street who, like carbon, undergoes high temperature pressure conditions to emerge as a diamond. And in 2013, we served the at-risk youth community. So the first community that you see is a hostel for troubled youths. These are youths who are aged 16 to 21. And the second community that you see is our children of prisoners. These are children who are aged 6 to 12. Both communities usually come from homes where their parents are either absent, in prison, or just dealing with loan sharking or drug activities. As I invited them to share with me their crisis, I realized that these were the narratives that they had been living out. And I also realized that my own narrative was not too different. I too had regrets in my life. I too knew how it felt like to be separated from close friends, close loved ones. And I too felt like I was a victim of pain. It was then that I realized that we were all in need of hope for the future. So we set out to reframe our narratives using music and storytelling. So the co-creation space that we had allowed us to make meaning out of our crisis, and it also gave us the opportunity to identify and express difficult emotions. We kept the spaces intimate because we wanted to open it up for the youths as well as their befrienders who believed in them, so that they could begin to have courage to believe in their own dreams and to make critical decisions. My relationship with the at-risk youths have continued ever since, and typically our workshops aim to do the following. We teach them a creative skill to help them to cope with certain difficult thoughts and emotions. We also open up the space to make it conducive for reflection and self-awareness. And most importantly, we ask them questions to help everybody to reflect on meaningful perspectives that they can have throughout their journey. And this is important because the will to make meaning is something that we all have, even in the most miserable of circumstances. It is based on the premise of Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl's logotherapy. So today, I'd like to share with you my own reframed narrative. As I look back on the journey, I'm very, very grateful because I realized that I have gone from feeling like a victim of my crisis in 2011 to now being able to spread hope and to share hope with my new friends. And I was able to have a different perspective about my life and about the pain that I had to go through in the process of giving. I realized that there was a purpose for giving and there was a purpose for pain. Pain taught me about empathy. It allowed me to feel what somebody else was going through, to connect with them and to comfort them, and to remind them that even in that season of winter, there will be a season of spring. So today, I would like to present to you a song that I wrote back in 2011, when my voice was just a whisper. I sang it to myself to remind myself that my season of spring would come, and today it has come full circle. Let me just tune in a little bit. Spring is coming, time to sing. Cast off the ache of pain, the reproach and the shame. Let your past be your past. You think you never see the sun. You're learning how to live, not run. You've got to learn to live. Don't forget who you are. You will live to go far. Lift your eyes. There's a garden of spring. You can dance, you can sing. There'll be spring. Wipe away all your tears and let goodness take your hand. No, come on, dance, come on, sing. There'll be spring. Springtime is coming. Springtime is coming. Flowers are blooming in the cool breeze. A pink, lavender, and yellow. Spring is a lover's kiss on his lover's cheek. It's my favorite season. Lift your eyes. There's a garden of spring. You can dance, you can sing. There'll be spring. Wipe away all your tears and let goodness take your hand. No, come on, dance, come on, sing. There'll be spring. Oh, come on, dance, come on, sing. There'll this is the power of a reframed narrative. And as demonstrated by Luke, as demonstrated by a lot of my different fellows, I've gotten to know so much better who have actually started to give to other people. I think that is the power of having a different perspective, of making meaning. And if you like the song, you can always check it out on the website. And you can also have a conversation with me to find out more about what we do. Thank you.
That was the best thing that ever happened on this stage at CSIS, okay? Seriously. Now, it's a real privilege to introduce our next and last speaker, Bill Reese, the head of International Youth Foundation. I have known Bill for more than 20 years. I met him when I was a young social entrepreneur in Washington. This is before social entrepreneurship was a thing, and I was just this uppity little young woman in DC. And I had this idea that I wanted to create a network of women and men who would lobby the US government to invest in women and girls. And this is way before women and girls were all the rage that they are now. And a lot of people actually told me, senior people in Washington said, don't do it, you won't be successful, this is a hard town, it chews people up and spits them out. And Bill was one of the people who said, I think you can do it. I really think you can do it. And in fact, why don't you come over here to my organization? I'll give you a free desk, a free phone, free space for a year, and I want to see you make it happen. So I owe a lot to Bill Reese, and this was before he was at IYF, so he wasn't being paid to do this, so let's just be clear about that. So thank you, Bill. It's my honor to introduce you to our wonderful audience and to close our program. Thank you, Bill.
But if we had had a Youth Action Net program 20 years ago, Ritu would have been in the first class. That's for sure. It was fun to be the first male on her board a few years later. Ahmed, you stole a lot of my talking points, but if you only learned English in the last 6 or 7 years, and now you can be a successful envoy for a bureaucracy that is 70 years old and has 40 different organizations that you're supposed to align yourself with, God help you and God help me. I mean, you've done a wonderful, wonderful job. And you are, so my talking points, I'll leave them up here for someone else to take home. Yeah, or I'll give them to you. But let me just say, Doug put it very well that this program has two goals. One is to help young social entrepreneurs grow their organization. And all I could give Ritu 20 years ago was some space, and not the money she really came asking me for, but space and all that. But we didn't want, even from the very beginning, Youth Action Net to be judged by maybe 5 years later, is that young entrepreneur still running his or her business, or 10 years later, and have the yardstick be only that they're growing their social enterprise, although that was a cardinal part of what we wanted to help them do. But it was also a leadership program, knowing that young people would move on, like the 17-year-old sold his company and went public 10 years later and has created 3 or 4 other businesses since then. And Doug has invested in I can't tell you how many social enterprises of other young people as they've come along to try something out. So Ahmed went on to do something else. And people will go on, whether they become the Secretary General's second or third envoy for youth, they will go into the public sector and maybe be a civil servant. And Lord knows we need entrepreneurial people in our government, not just working on the top to make things happen, but working on the bottom to make bureaucracies function. Real reform oftentimes really comes from below. A number of our social entrepreneurs who are on the nonprofit side have gone off to start new businesses. They're benefit corporations, whether they call themselves that, because I don't think a 25 or 30-year-old who has started, well, I'm sorry, you have to be under 30 to be selected as a Youth Action Net fellow. If that fellow later on goes into the for-profit world, I don't think we'll have to teach her or him anything about corporate social responsibility or running a clean and honest business. If that person goes into politics, which I think a lot will do because they've got the charisma and the desire to change things, I don't think we'll see that politician end up in jail or stealing money or doing other things. In other words, the ethics that have drawn you into what you're doing, you're going to take on into whatever walks of life. And if they say today about young people, whether they're ever going to found an organization or not, whether you're going to have 4 or 5 careers, a couple of which haven't been invented yet for this generation, then we certainly want all people being entrepreneurial and taking it into their public, private, for-profit, nonprofit, wherever they go in life. You talked about recognition. Thank you for doing that. That was one of the principal reasons that we created the program. Because in fact, the founding company that helped us create the very first Youth Action Net program was the Finnish company Nokia. And Finland being close to Norway, and one of the great Finns, Martti Ahtisaari, being a Peace Prize winner, and he was very affiliated with what we're doing. The president of Finland, who really was a diplomat and a peacemaker in his own ways, and that's why he won ultimately the prize. The Nokia people wanted us to give a prize that would be a Nobel-type prize for an astonishing young entrepreneur. And you know, when you're co-designing and working with corporate sponsors, you can't say that's a bad idea. But we really didn't think picking one entrepreneur out of the world a year would be a doable thing. And how would we do that? And we said, but it's a great idea that there are lots of young people out there doing incredible things in their 20s. Let's pick 15 of them or 20 of them or something like that, and then give them more than a plaque and a check, but give them some training and learning. And it worked. And it really worked. And then what really worked, and Doug talked about scale, is that after doing about 5 years of these global programs that you've seen, all 20 of them here today, or you'll meet the rest of them that you haven't met so far in just a minute. Scale was very important to us, and we didn't think we wanted to scale it in English or bring 100 of them at a time and put them in headsets. So that an English-speaking program for a global didn't seem to us to be the way to scale it, but taking it to Mexico. And some of you who were in this panel heard Sandra from Universidad Valle de Mexico. UVM, a big, I think, 15 campus university that has a couple 100,000 students. This became their social responsibility program to show that they were investing in young people from Mexico who weren't, most of them, their students, but were young Mexicans. So this was the university investing in young people in a different way. That program worked so well that we are now in 22 countries, and next year we'll add South Africa, Morocco, another university in Brazil, Bahia, and what am I leaving out? Jamaica. How could I leave out Jamaica? Since the Jamaican who's helping us do that is one of my board members. But let me just say, we have 2 board members now that are under 30, and they are elected and chosen out of the alumni of this program. And it's been one of the best things we've ever done for our own governance. But let me just come back to, we remember that night when your group was here, Ahmed, and not just you, but people of all generations went down to the White House and started singing and dancing, and my kids were down there, in fact. But then I remember 2 months later, I was in Oman on Inauguration Day with about 10 of my staff, all sort of regretting that we weren't back in Washington, 1, to have a holiday, which is Inauguration Day, and 2, to be down on the Mall and celebrating what was a historic new person coming to power. But we were watching the election, or the inauguration, from Oman. And when they put the cameras on the Mall and the sun hadn't come up yet, and I knew a couple of my kids were down there, and all you could see, it looked like ants running around. The sun hadn't come up, but you could tell the mall was absolutely full of people. It was actually quite fun to watch an inauguration then from a foreign country, your country, and to watch it then from having drinks there in a bar in Ahmad, but watching the inauguration from Jordan. The 2030 goals. So my talking points didn't have anything about that. You raised it. Let me just say this. You want us to align with the 2030 goals. Let me turn that around. I think the 2030 goals, I'm totally with you that they are terribly important, but to be successful, the goals have to align with youth. If in your country and so much of the developing world, the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, where 70-some% of the population is under 30, that means that about a third of the population of those countries is in this 15 to 25 cohort. Well, a 15-year-old today will be 30 in 2030 if she or he is not well employed in a well-earning, let's put it that way, in some sort of formal job or a micro or a self-employment or maybe a micro that's grown into a real SME, we won't eradicate extreme poverty. Because this cohort's the largest cohort of young people in the history of the world. Today's teenagers have to be well employed, earning their way out of poverty, or else we won't eradicate poverty. And today's teenagers, if they're in their 30s and not decently employed, or have started a business and has failed and can't have the resilience to come back and try something again, then they'll probably live in poverty for the rest of their lives. And their children will be the 15-year-olds of 2030. And if they're not better employed than their parents, who should be by then better employed than their parents behind them, again, we won't eradicate extreme poverty. So we have to have an economic growth, and that means we've got to have the opportunities for young people to go to school, whether they do second chance programs and programs for dropouts and would-be high school finishers, which is where we put most of our efforts at IYF, or they are hardworking, working class or middle class students who go to a Laureate University or some other university and are going to pay their way through school. We have to have economic opportunities for young people to make their futures. I think the dignity that comes with earning your way out of poverty, we can help out. We philanthropists, we corporate social responsibility types, we policy types, we foreign aid agency types, but the ultimate eradication of poverty is poor people earning their way out of poverty. And so I think the 2030 goals are hugely important, and do read them. There are almost as many subcategory goals, 160, almost one for each of the 193 countries that approved them. There are an awful lot of them. And many, many of them don't mention youth at all, but that's okay, because it won't be possible to do those things if governments and all the other agencies that are out there then have a dog in this fight, so to speak, the NGOs, the think tanks, the foreign aid agencies, the corporate social responsibility, the biggest foundations in the world and some of the smallest. It won't work if we don't see those teenagers today very successful. So that cohort has a chance to become, rather than the youth bulge that creates a lot of social and economic problems that we did talk about today, some of them, but they become a demographic dividend that's economic, political, social, civic, in all ways if we get it right. So I think those goals, we have to have the youth focus and lens to all those goals if they're going to be successful. And that's why IYF and CSIS 2 years ago created a partnership. That its first project was to create the first ever global youth well-being index that we created with the Hilton Company, Hilton Worldwide, CSIS, and IYF to be a diagnostic tool to understand what youth well-being is, so that whether you're going to look at it from the healthiness of youth or the civic engagement of youth or the employability of youth or the hope that youth have or don't have, that's what makes up well-being, and we know that as being parents, we know it with our neighbors, and that's the way we've got to look at it too when we help governments and civil society do the right things to have a scalable solution for youth that have to have youth as part of the solution making, part of the planning and solution making. That's what it's going to take. That's why we came here to create a Youth Wellbeing Index. And today we have a partnership with CSIS for all the reasons that Ritu mentioned. A first-rate, leading think tank, interested, dedicated to good foreign policies across countries, peace, security, prosperity, and all the things that would characterize international relations. It needs a youth focus across all those areas, and we've been able to do that with the Youth Wellbeing Index, and the themes that we're pushing through this partnership are really workforce and economic development and economic opportunities for young people, civic engagement, and how to avoid or build the resilience to move beyond conflict. And your poetry and your music are the resilience of an individual who has overcome a huge challenge. Resilience is a word that's come into our development vocabulary. It's an old word, but it's a new theme for how does a community or how does a nation, after a natural disaster, after a civil war, after a whatever type of other challenge a country has, the resilience to rebuild. Well, that in a youth development theme, that's what we're trying to build in young people and see them build the skills, the behaviors, the attitudes to be resilient, to get that first job, maybe lose it, but have the grit and the resilience to go out and get a second job, to see their first micro maybe not be as successful, but stick with it and earn their way out of poverty. And I think that goes for all the civic and other engagements that young people would have. I like to say that if we get it right, and a child goes through this youth phase, and youth, as many people call it, is a transition. And we're all into outcomes these days, measurable outcomes. Well, the measurable outcome of a youth development program is a healthy, civically engaged, and income-earning adult. And when society gets that right, in mass numbers by business, government, and civil society working together and getting the most out of the entrepreneurial power of youth as problem solvers rather than youth being problems to be solved, then our societies get a 50-year return on investment. Why? Because a 20 or 25-year-old who gets through school is healthy, is civically engaged, and employed is probably going to be employed and do well for the rest of his or her life. So that's a 50-year return on investment. When we get it wrong, it's going to be a drag on that person, that family, and society for probably 30 or 40 years because the person won't live as long. But the person doesn't become an active citizen, entrepreneur, taxpayer, participant in the economy, and with the resilience and resources to get on with their life and their family's life. So this program of ours is truly for an elite group of people. Not everyone is to be a founder. Not everyone's going to be Mark Zuckerberg. Not anyone's going to be any one of these 20 people here. I didn't found an organization in my 20s, I told them. And we sat around the CEO roundtable yesterday. It was the 20 Youth Action Fellows, Doug Becker and myself. Well, I was the only one that didn't found an organization while I was in my 20s. But I certainly have huge respect for all of you. And we want to see you connected with each other and with the alumni who have stuck with us all these years, because if we've got 1,300 alumni today, as Ashok said, we will have 2,000 by 2020, we'll have about 4,000 by 2030. And at that point, you'll still only be 42 years old or something like that. So there's a lot to grow on. So thank you all for being here. And I think Ashok's going to come up and give us one more. I just want to thank Ashok Regby and his team. I want to thank Ritu, our colleague, but all her colleagues, because we share her in this partnership with CSIS. I want to thank all of you who came here today because you're interested in this topic of social enterprise and youth-led social innovation. It is a topic that needs more attention, and thank you for coming.
I'm gonna take a special moment now. You guys heard from 5 folks. What I'm going to do right now is ask the fellows, as I call your names, just to stand on your seat and just remain standing. Please hold your applause. And then at the end, we can applaud for what's working well in the world. So, empowering women refugees through creating safe spaces that offer training and resources related to legal rights, health, and family well-being. Ayaz from Iraq. As I said, I know it's hard to hold the applause, so I can understand the feeling, but if you could, that would be great, and we can all together at the end applaud. Enabling people to lend and borrow rather than purchase the items they need through creation of an open source platform. Isa from Turkey. Okay. Providing farmers with a low-cost, highly nutritious animal feed, resulting in higher profits and increased availability of protein-rich food. Blessing from Nigeria. Equipping emerging suburban communities with the spaces and tools they need to become connected and resilient neighborhoods. Bridie from Australia. Providing medical assistance and preventative education to isolated and vulnerable communities. Carolina from Mexico. Helping youth at risk to craft new live narratives and turn their personal reflections into art. Crystal from Singapore. Providing cloud-based tools and training to university students to conduct free energy assessments for local and small businesses. Daniel from United States. Building a nationwide, nonpartisan movement of Indian citizens who hold their decision makers accountable on issues of public welfare. Deepa from India. Designing and building sustainable architectural solutions for people who have lost their homes or lack adequate housing. Gabriela from Honduras. Enabling residents of Brazil's favelas to access high-quality English classes at 20% of the market rate. Gustavo from Brazil. Providing women with free health-related messages via mobile technology aimed at improving infant health while reducing maternal and child mortality. Isaac from Kenya. Empowering youth and community members with the training and tools to identify local needs and develop arts-based solutions. Leonardo from Colombia. Providing solutions for foster care policies and practices that incorporate the voices and experiences of the youth they serve. Luke from United Kingdom. Making therapeutic swim lessons available to children with severe development disabilities and instilling a love for staying active through swimming. Matthew from Canada. Creating Indonesia's largest online marketplace for private tutors and classes. Muhammad Usman from Indonesia. Empowering youth to combat gender-based violence through training them to lead workshops, events, and help desk. Nafula from Kenya. Ensuring that all students recognize the STEM fields as viable career path and have the skills to pursue them. Oscar from Chile. Providing unemployed youth and disadvantaged students with free IT training. Natalie from South Africa. Helping young women survivors of sexual violence regain their confidence and dignity through mentorships, psychological support, and job skills training. Queen from Botswana. And engaging parents, volunteers, and companies in building libraries in low-income schools with the goal of strengthening literacy, educational outcomes, and active citizenship. Teresa from Peru. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what is right about the world. Let's give them a big hand. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Doug, Laureate, for being a true partner in this journey together. It's been an honor. Thank you. Thank you.